Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. First things first, thank you, Sassy Simone Smith, for requesting this one. It's not a series I think I would have ever found on my own, never mind considered watching. And second, apologies if this one ends up being a little late. There was a last-minute change of plans. Yumeiro Patissiere has 2 seasons, but Season 1 is 50 episodes, while Season 2 is only 13. 50 is a lot more than I usually try to cram into a single review. Simone had originally helped me decide on a cutoff point within Season 1, but then I got to that episode and realized I'd misunderstood something about the tournament that takes place. We'll get there, but basically I thought they'd been competing just to study abroad. The original cutoff point was actually just Phase 1 of that tournament. When I realized that, I felt it made more sense to just finish the last 10 episodes of Season 1 and let Season 2 be its own thing. So that's where we are now. Yumeiro Patissiere is the story of Ichigo Amano, a clumsy, high-spirited young girl who loves sweets, but has never been able to find the motivation to pursue any of the many hobbies she's tried out over the years. Which wouldn't be that noteworthy, except her younger sister's a piano prodigy, so the pressure's on to find a dream she can follow herself. Ichigo was really close with her grandmother, who owned a bakery, and who would use those sweets to cheer her up whenever she was upset. Unfortunately, her grandmother died when she was very young, and never got the opportunity to teach Ichigo any of her recipes. But Ichigo's sense of taste is something that will come to define her over the course of the series. She has an unparalleled ability to recognize flavors, so she's shocked to come across a cake that tastes just like one her grandma used to make while out at some kind of dessert convention. Tracking down the creator leads her to Henri Lucas, a young but very accomplished French patissier. They get to talking, and she discovers that her grandma was pretty well known too. Despite only running a little family shop, Henri tells her that the flavor's probably familiar because they studied at the same school, the prestigious St. Marie's Academy. Ultimately, he's so impressed by Ichigo's innate tasting skills that he makes a formal recommendation on her behalf, and she's accepted into the Japanese branch of the school. I feel like that description probably sounds like it's meant to be a little sarcastic, but I really don't mean it that way. This series could be dramatic, but not in a way that made me want to roll my eyes or anything. I really have to stress that the heartfelt sweetness was genuine. A lot of the time, what Ichigo's tasting isn't just specific ingredients and techniques, but the baker's intentions and feelings behind their work. She is chasing after greatness herself, but not in the sense that she wants to become famous. Ichigo's dream is to make sweets that make people smile, just like her grandmother's creations would always cheer her up, and it was always a little heartwarming to see her tailor a recipe specifically to whoever she was making it for. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Henri Lucas's influence gets her into the school, and leads to her teacher placing her in A group, the highest-ranked students in the class. But Ichigo doesn't actually have any culinary experience, which immediately becomes clear on her first day. The groups are graded as a single unit, so it falls to her classmates to catch her up, lest her shortcomings reflect on all of them. The other members of A group are 3 boys known as the Sweets Princes. The top 3 students in the grade, each with their own specialty. 2 of them, at least, are immediately welcoming. Ando is humble and friendly. His parents run a shop back home that makes traditional Japanese sweets. His dream is to one day open his own shop next door that combines all the traditional tastes from his childhood with all the Western tastes and techniques he's learning through his studies here. Hanabusa is the one known for being a flirt. He specializes in candy art and has an affinity for roses in particular. His mother actually teaches the flower arranging course here at the school, and his father was a gardener who died when he was young. He's all about aesthetics and presentation. He treats each assignment like a work of art, and, like Ando, finds a way to include his childhood influences into everything he makes. which is something that can't be said about the last member of their group. Kashino is harsh and uptight, but that becomes a lot more understandable once you get his backstory. He comes from a long line of doctors who are less than thrilled that he wants to follow in his wayward uncle's footsteps and become a chocolatier. He's only being allowed to attend school here under the agreement that he never once falls from his position at the top of the class. So, though he could definitely be a little more tactful with some of his critiques, Ichigo is eager to learn and gladly accepts his guidance when she's not having to fend off the insults and the shouting. I do have to acknowledge his personal stakes here. The consequences for their grades getting dragged down by her mistakes and inexperience are a lot more serious for Kashino. And it also softened my opinion of him to see how he does work harder than just about anyone, except maybe Ichigo herself. So yes, I liked all three boys, but that's actually not the end of Ichigo's new friendships. On her way into the school on her first day, she passes by a statue of some sort of fairy queen in the courtyard. Her new roommate explains to her that there's a bit of a legend here at St. Marie's, telling of fairies known as sweet spirits. They say that if you see one, all your dreams will come true. After really struggling with her first assignment, Ichigo stays up to practice in the cooking classroom nearly the whole night, something that will turn into a habit of hers. Impressed by her dedication, a sweet spirit named Vanilla appears before her and explains that there's a bit more to the fairy tale. There's a whole sweets kingdom, with spirits studying to become one of the esteemed court patissiers and work in the palace. After their studies reach a certain level, they're sent to the human world to find a partner, after which they send back reports of everything they make together to be judged by the queen. Vanilla quickly becomes a loyal friend, if not exactly a magic charm like the legend made it sound, and it's not long before Ichigo discovers that her new teammates each have a spirit partner as well. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I came to enjoy the spirit's inclusion. I realize now that I was a little cynical at first. I viewed them like, okay, is this going to be the component that makes the cuteness a little insufferable? A little too much of a kid's show to take seriously? Or else I worried that their storylines would feel like the kind of filler you're just impatient to get through, but I actually found it kind of refreshing whenever an episode would focus on the spirits. This isn't a super fast-paced show. Even once the big tournament starts up, there's usually time for an episode or two of just a daily life sort of storyline in between the rounds. So the spirits episodes didn't feel out of place or anything. And it really helped that their personalities are as distinct as their human partners. Caramel, for instance, was a bit of a crybaby. It was really sweet to see Ando treat her like one of his many younger siblings, how defensive and loyal he was when another spirit tried to steal him away to be her partner instead one episode. To be honest, their dynamic was what saved Ando from seeming a little bland sometimes, compared to the others. I really enjoyed Ichigo as a main protagonist as well. She worked hard and never held grudges, even when sometimes she may have been better off if she was a little less trusting. She was upbeat, but not immune to getting discouraged. No one in our main group gave off that air of being a little too perfect. They all have times where they struggle, and it was always great to see the team rise up and support each other. And team is really a better description than classmates, because by the time the season's halfway through, the focus of the story settles on the Cake Grand Prix, a competition where the winning team will get to study abroad in Paris for 2 years at the main campus. It's open to all, though it's almost unheard of for middle school students to get past the first round, but Ichigo's group isn't the top of their class for nothing. Getting into the tournament is definitely going to snowball into some specifics I want to talk about, so to step back for just a minute. Yumeiro Patissiere was all around a pleasant surprise. It is definitely the cutest show I have ever spent this much time with, and I'll admit that I worried at first that I would struggle to get invested in it, but it did a really good job crafting likable characters, and there was always just enough of an edge to keep the stakes up or make it feel real. In the very first episode, for instance, Ichigo's dad is really against her going away to boarding school so young. He's always been the warmer, doting parent. It's her mom who ends up pushing him to let her go follow her dreams, and she comes right out and tells her it's because she's always felt a little guilty for clearly favoring her younger, more talented daughter. Ichigo does have a loving, supportive family overall, but I was impressed that they'd throw such a heavy concept into the very beginning, even if it never evolves into something truly dark. Complicating the family relationships like that made it feel real. I liked that everything wasn't shiny, picture-perfect, because that carried over to the tournament arc as well. It didn't feel like success was guaranteed. You couldn't trust that everything would always work out. With that in mind, if you're interested in seeing it yourself, I'll leave you here, and if you're in the mood for something lighthearted, I definitely recommend this one. But there's also more I want to talk about, so be prepared for spoilers from here on out. Another major character came into play once the tournament got underway. Mari Tenoji, the top student at the high school, president of the student council, and known for being Henri-sensei's favorite. The tournament's held every year, but this is the first time she's ever chosen to compete. Henri transferred back to the Paris branch of the school shortly before Ichigo arrived, so it doesn't take much to deduce why Mari's so interested in the prize to study abroad in France for 2 years. She's partnered with the high school equivalent of the Sweets Princes, so they're the team to beat. And Team Ichigo doesn't beat them. It's a close match, lost only because Kashino had pulled an all-nighter preparing for it and ends up passing out in the middle. There's 2 parts to that. First, I want to talk about Mari as a character, because the way they developed her flaws over time was really great from a writing standpoint. She's made out to seem kind of perfect when she's first introduced. Not just beautiful and talented, but down-to-earth and likable even. She takes a special interest in Ichigo as Henri's other special project. And as you get deeper in, you see that there are actually several students all over the world who got into St. Marie's because Henri handpicked them, but Mari actually wasn't one of them. Honestly, I liked Mari better when she wasn't with her team, because the boys were pretty arrogant, but she remained approachable even once she and Ichigo were officially rivals, and Mari's skills really did seem way beyond anything Team Ichigo could credibly match. Mari's downfall is the thing that makes the end of the series really work, though. Well, I do want to say that I definitely feel like the second phase of the tournament, held between all the winning teams from each individual school tournament, should have been its own season. Cramming it into the last 10 episodes left it feeling really rushed. Frankly, I don't even remember half of the competing teams. They just didn't have nearly as much personality or screen time as a lot of the teams in the preliminary tournament. But back to Mari, and Henri as he comes back to judge the final rounds, and you really can't talk about one without the other. It really becomes apparent that Ichigo's view of him is affected by how she's never known him as a teacher. He's earned a reputation for being a harsh critic. Mari's excited to see him at first, too, until he tells her how disappointed he is to see she's still chasing after him. He's pretty cruel about it, too, telling her she's doing a disservice to her spirit partner by not growing up a little and forging her own path. And what's just hinted at first is confirmed by the time we get to Paris. It can't be denied that Mari's worked hard to get here, but what's really motivated her all this time is an infatuation with Henri Lucas. Team Ichigo loses to Team Tenoji in the preliminary finals by just a single point, but Henri announces that they've impressed him so much, being so far above the level of middle schoolers, that he's gotten permission to allow 2 Japanese teams into the real competition this year. and I was a little torn about this. Don't get me wrong, I wanted to see them succeed. I just worried a little that it wouldn't feel like they really deserved it. They are so much younger than their competitors. It wouldn't have felt like the end of the world if they'd fallen short this year and came back for a redemption in the second season. But what Mari's storyline ends up driving home is that the technical aspects aren't always the bottom line. Ichigo's definitely got the purest motivation of all the teams, and it was satisfying to see her personal skills come back and win it for them, her tasting ability, and more important, the care that she puts into each of her desserts. The finals actually comes down to 3 parts, because they tie twice. But this gives Ichigo an opportunity to really observe the judges and take note of their personal tastes, so she makes each of their plates just a little different to cater to that. That kind of thoughtfulness took away any reservations I may have had about the youngest team not deserving the victory. So this season leaves off on Team Ichigo preparing to study abroad in France for the next 2 years, with Ichigo securing a personal apprenticeship with Henri himself. I know I've said it already, but thank you, Sassy Simone Smith, for requesting this one. I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I was expecting to. It might sound a little cynical to say I'm not sure how Season 2 will turn out, not only because it's so much shorter, but it looks like the next season will be the one that dives into the romance. I really liked that there was so much focus on this one being a friendship story. Not just because that's more to my personal tastes, but because there was such a good setup for it, with the tournament requiring so much teamwork, and from the very beginning, with how each assignment is graded for the group as a whole, not individually. They very easily could have thrown in a love triangle, and it would have felt a little hypocritical for the boys to be competing against each other at a time when they needed to come together as a team the most. And Ichigo herself never seemed to have much room in her head for romance. But they've got 2 years to grow into a love storyline, so it's too soon to judge whether I think it'll work out or not. That review should be out in another few weeks. Thank you for watching.